Why did two BTS members, known as the closest of friends, suddenly choose to separate in secret after practice? And why were ARMY the first to realize that something big was being hidden? That question hung in the air like a ticking time bomb, disturbing logic, emotions, and the convictions of millions of fans worldwide. Because what happened between Kim Taehyung and Taehyung Jungkook that day was not an ordinary moment, nor a coincidence that could be brushed aside. It was a sequence of subtle signals, too carefully aligned to be called accidental and too honest to be dismissed as mere ARMY imagination. That day was supposed to end like any other practice day. The BTS practice room returned to silence after being filled with heavy breathing, brief laughter, and movements already memorized by muscle memory. One by one, the members prepared to leave the room, exchanging small jokes, pats on the shoulder, and walking in the same direction as always. But it was precisely there, at the quietest moment after a long routine, that something never announced began to reveal itself. Taehyung and Jungkook did not walk with the other members. There was no casual wave, no light conversation. They exchanged a brief glance, too fleeting for an ordinary camera, yet too deep for ARMY eyes trained to read their idol's body language. Why did they choose to separate in silence? Why right after practice, when everyone was tired and off guard? And most unsettling of all, why did ARMY feel compelled to leak what they saw, as if the secret was too big to keep to themselves? To some, this might sound exaggerated. Two friends walking together. What's so special about that? But for ARMY, context is everything. The friendship between Taehyung and Jungkook is not an ordinary one. It has grown under constant cameras, framed in interviews, captured in thousands of clips from practices, concerts, and live broadcasts. Every small change, every unusual pause, every gaze that lingers half a second longer than usual becomes part of a larger pattern that is continuously observed, analyzed, and remembered. ARMY began to sense something was off from details almost invisible to the naked eye. As the other members moved several steps ahead, Taehyung slowed down. Jungkook, who usually walked with his head down or while joking around, suddenly turned his head quickly, as if checking something. No dialogue could be heard, but their body language spoke louder than words. They separated from the others, taking a different path, and at that moment, whispers were born in the minds of fans. There was a conversation they didn't want anyone to hear, a decision they didn't want anyone to witness. Why did ARMY leak it? This question is far more complex than a simple accusation of overly curious fans. In BTS fandom culture, ARMY often position themselves not only as spectators, but as witnesses to history. They feel responsible for recording small moments that could later become crucial pieces of BTS's larger story. When something feels different, the urge to share that observation doesn't come from malice, but from collective anxiety. Is everything really okay? Since the news spread, social media timelines have been flooded with theories, slowed-down video clips, zoomed-in screenshots, and emotional narratives colliding with one another. Some are convinced this is a sign of a hidden conflict. Others believe it's proof of a closeness too personal to be displayed publicly. Still others ask in a more academic and detached tone, does working within a group as massive as BTS require stricter private spaces, even among the closest members? One thing, however, is undeniable. The way Taehyung and Jungkook separated that day felt intentional. Not spontaneous. Not a logistical coincidence. There was rhythm, synchronization, and an unspoken agreement understood only by the two of them. And it was precisely that silence that made ARMY feel there was a big secret behind it. Some veteran ARMY connected this moment to behavioral changes they had noticed recently. Jungkook's gaze appearing emptier during practice. Taehyung seeming quieter behind his smile. There was no official statement, no clarification, yet those small fragments now seemed to come together, forming an unsettling picture. Were they protecting something? Or someone? Emotions escalated as the narrative of leaked by ARMY turned into a double-edged sword. On one side, there was guilt for bringing a private moment into the public eye. On the other, a greater fear emerged. If fans stayed silent, would something important be overlooked? This is where ARMY's moral dilemma surfaced. They love BTS, but that love often comes with a desire to know, to understand, to ensure their idols are not carrying burdens alone. The friendship between Taehyung and Jungkook has long been portrayed as warm, playful, and deeply supportive. Precisely because of that, even the smallest change feels destabilizing. When two people who are usually open suddenly choose a silent path, the public cannot help but ask, what are they facing together that must be hidden even from the other members? Some fans speculate that it relates to internal pressure, career decisions, or emotional conversations too sensitive for open spaces. Others see it as a symbol of new maturity, where Taehyung and Jungkook are learning to separate professional and personal spaces more firmly. Yet these theories only deepen curiosity rather than soothe it. What makes this story even more dramatic is its timing. After practice, when bodies are exhausted, emotions are more honest, and professional masks begin to slip. Cultural pop psychologists often describe moments like this as a vulnerable zone, where the most truthful conversations occur. Did Taehyung and Jungkook use that moment to discuss something long suppressed? ARMY, who leaked this observation, were not merely spreading gossip. They were spreading unease. Every post, every long thread, was filled with rhetorical questions and anxious tones. Why did they look so serious? Why together? Why step away? And why does it feel as if there is an invisible boundary being carefully guarded? To this day, there has been no official answer, no statement,
no denial.
That silence itself has become the main fuel for speculation. In the modern entertainment world, silence is often louder than clarification. And in the case of Taehyung and Jungkook, that silence feels heavy with meaning. Some ARMY have begun calling for empathy, reminding others that idols are human and entitled to privacy. Yet even those calls cannot fully quiet the curiosity that has already grown too large. Because if there truly was nothing, why did that moment feel so different from hundreds of similar moments before? This story is far from over. What happened after they separated? What conversation took place without witnesses? And will ARMY ever know the truth behind the big secret they feel, but cannot fully prove? What is certain is that since that day, every interaction between Taehyung and Jungkook will be watched through a new lens. A secret, whether real or merely perceived, has changed how the public reads their friendship. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise of all. That one silent moment after practice could shake the beliefs of millions, simply because two friends chose to walk together, away from the crowd, leaving behind more questions than answers. The aftermath of that moment did not fade quietly. Instead, it lingered, growing heavier with each passing day, as if the silence Taehyung and Jungkook left behind had a life of its own. ARMY did not simply move on. They replayed the moment in their minds, again and again, searching for meaning in gestures that once felt ordinary but now seemed charged with hidden intent. Every future appearance, every shared frame, every lack of interaction became part of a much larger emotional equation that fans felt compelled to solve. What unsettled many was not just the act of separating, but the emotional weight that seemed to cling to both of them afterward. Jungkook appeared more restrained, his expressions carefully controlled, as though he were consciously holding something back. Taehyung, meanwhile, carried a calm that felt unusually distant, a composure that read less like peace and more like careful self-protection. When two people known for their openness suddenly retreat inward, the shift is impossible to ignore, especially for a fandom that has followed their emotional rhythms for years. Speculation intensified as ARMY began revisiting older footage, drawing lines between past and present. Moments that were once seen as playful teasing or quiet support were reinterpreted through a new lens. Had the signs always been there, hidden in plain sight? Or was this truly something new, something born from pressures that had finally reached a breaking point? The lack of clarity only deepened the emotional investment, transforming curiosity into concern. In many discussions, a recurring question surfaced with growing urgency. If this was truly a private matter, why did it feel so heavy? Privacy, after all, does not usually radiate tension. It does not leave observers with a lingering sense of unease. And yet, that was exactly what ARMY described, a collective intuition that something meaningful had shifted beneath the surface of Taehyung and Jungkook's friendship. Some fans began to frame the moment not as a fracture, but as a turning point. Friendships, especially those forged under intense public scrutiny, are not static. They evolve, sometimes quietly, sometimes painfully. Perhaps this separation after practice was not a sign of distance, but of trust, the kind that allows two people to step away from the noise together and confront difficult truths without an audience. This interpretation offered comfort to those who feared the worst, suggesting that what looked like secrecy might actually be intimacy in its most serious form. Yet, even this more hopeful reading did not fully resolve the discomfort. Because if Taehyung and Jungkook were indeed protecting something precious between them, why did it feel as though that protection came at an emotional cost? Why did their silence ripple outward, affecting not only themselves, but the entire fandom? In the world of BTS, where connection with fans has always been emphasized as sincere and reciprocal, withdrawal feels especially loud. The role of ARMY in this unfolding narrative cannot be separated from the story itself. By noticing, sharing, and discussing the moment, fans became participants rather than observers. Some criticized this, arguing that ARMY crossed a line by exposing something that was never meant to be seen. Others countered that the exposure was inevitable in an era where every movement is documented, slowed down, and dissected in real time. The real issue, they argued, was not that ARMY noticed, but that the moment existed in the first place. As days turned into weeks, the absence of clarification became its own form of communication. In media psychology, silence is often interpreted as strategic, especially within large entertainment systems. It can be a way to let speculation burn itself out, or a way to avoid confirming narratives that are too complex to address publicly. But for ARMY, the silence surrounding Taehyung and Jungkook did not feel strategic. It felt emotional. It felt unresolved. This unresolved tension began to influence how fans perceived BTS as a whole. If even the strongest bonds within the group could harbor unspoken struggles, what did that say about the cost of global fame? Taehyung and Jungkook's quiet separation after practice started to symbolize something larger, a glimpse into the emotional labor required to maintain perfection under relentless observation. Still, there were moments that reignited hope. A brief smile exchanged on stage, a subtle gesture of familiarity, a shared laugh that slipped out before either could stop it. These fragments reassured fans that whatever the secret was, it had not erased the foundation of their bond. But the fact that fans clung so tightly to these small signs only underscored how deeply shaken they had been by that single, silent departure. In the end, the question may not be whether ARMY was right to leak what they saw, or whether Taehyung and Jungkook truly share a big secret. The deeper question is why this moment resonated so profoundly. Why did it touch a nerve not just among fans, but within the broader conversation about idols, privacy, and emotional authenticity? Perhaps because it reminded everyone that behind the polished performances and carefully curated images are real relationships, shaped by pressure, loyalty, fear, and love. The truth may never be fully revealed. Taehyung and Jungkook may choose to keep that moment locked away, known only to them. And maybe that is where it belongs. Yet the impact of that silent separation will remain, etched into the collective memory of ARMY as a reminder that even the strongest friendships can carry depths the public is not meant to see. What began as a fleeting moment after practice has become a lasting question mark, one that continues to hover over every interaction, every glance, every pause. And until that question is answered, if it ever is, the story of Taehyung and Jungkook's hidden moment will continue to live on, not as a confirmed truth, but as an emotional echo that refuses to fade. That emotional echo did not remain confined to online discussions alone. It quietly reshaped how ARMY interpreted time itself. Past memories, present interactions, and even imagined futures began to feel subtly altered. Moments that once felt lighthearted were now revisited with a sense of gravity, as if fans were rereading a familiar book only to realize that certain lines carried meanings they had overlooked before. The separation after practice had become a lens, and through it, everything looked different. What made this particularly powerful was that nothing concrete had actually happened in the public eye. There was no argument caught on camera, no harsh words, no visible conflict. And yet, the absence of visible drama made the situation even more haunting. Human intuition is often most unsettled not by what is seen, but by what is felt but cannot be named. In this case, ARMY felt a shift, subtle, quiet, but unmistakable, and that feeling refused to be dismissed. Some fans began to ask questions that went beyond Taehyung and Jungkook themselves. They questioned the structure surrounding them. How much emotional space do idols truly have to process personal matters when their schedules are relentless and their lives perpetually observed? Is silence sometimes the only form of control left to them? Within this framework, the act of walking away together, away from the group and away from cameras, began to look less like secrecy and more like survival, yet even survival comes at a cost. For Taehyung and Jungkook, the cost appeared to be emotional visibility. By choosing privacy, they inadvertently created distance, not necessarily between each other, but between themselves and the people who had grown accustomed to feeling emotionally close to them. ARMY had long believed that BTS's strength lay in openness, in shared vulnerability. This moment challenged that belief, forcing fans to confront a difficult truth. Closeness does not guarantee access. As this realization spread, the tone of discussion slowly shifted. The initial shock and suspicion softened into something more reflective, even philosophical. Fans began to wonder whether they had unknowingly placed unfair expectations on the bond between Taehyung and Jungkook. Had the narrative of their friendship, shaped by years of content and fan interpretation, become a cage rather than a celebration? If so, perhaps the secret was not a dramatic revelation, but the quiet weight of being endlessly defined by others. Still, the emotional tension never fully disappeared. Each new appearance reignited the same questions, because humans are storytellers by nature, and unresolved moments demand continuation. When Taehyung laughed freely, fans wondered if it was genuine relief or a practice mask. When Jungkook looked thoughtful, they wondered what thoughts he kept carefully hidden. Every expression became a potential clue, every silence a possible answer that refused to speak. That I end this way, the leak by ARMY took on a paradoxical role. It was both an intrusion and a confession. An intrusion